Hello, welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. I'm Carolyn McDonald and I'm here with Dion Labriola, director of the documentary Dear Ike, Lost Letters to a Teen Idol. Let's take a look at a clip from the film.
February 8th, 1981. Ike. And I always said Ike. I never said Dear Ike because I didn't want him to get the wrong idea.
Please, if you still like animation, read this letter. Sorry it's so long. I've sent 6 of these letters out, so if you already got one, forget this.
Hey Dion, how are you?
It's good to be here.
Good to be here. Thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon, or whatever time people are watching this. So for people who haven't seen the film yet, tell us what it's about, a little bit of synopsis about the film.
Well, I always say it's about a kid who had big dreams to be a big shot movie producer one day and make big animated science fiction epics. And his specific dream was to have Ike Eisenman, who was a big Disney star, child actor of the day. He wanted Ike to star in one of the movies, and that was going to be his key to, really building this into a big empire. That kid was me, and I grew up in the Midwest back in the 70s and 80s when being a movie maker kind of made me seem like a person who was out of my mind. But I had this clear vision of what I wanted to do, and it led me on a journey that lasted 40 years until here we are.
Yeah, and it's one of the most inspiring films, documentaries I've ever seen.
Oh,
and you, like you said, you were that kid, and I want you to tell our viewers about you as that kid and that dream you had. And I was so just moved about your laser-like intention. Can you talk about talk about that, and first of all, the dream itself. Well, tell us about your vision as being an animator.
Yeah, well, I mean, since I was, before I could, probably talk, I was drawing, and it just was a really early passion of mine. And then I also liked movies, and then once I realized you could actually combine the two, and as an animator, I decided that's what I wanted to do. And then I just got this idea for a book in junior high, and that became just this gigantic epic with all these characters that I would draw whenever I had a spare moment. And it just became this ever-growing idea. And as it grew, it started to involve other people, other kids in my class. I told them that they could star in the movie, and then somehow I stumbled upon Ike one day. I saw him in a commercial, and I was like, maybe he should be in my movie. And well, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen the film, but once I learned more about Ike, he seemed like more and more of the perfect fit. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and back then, other people might have thought it was a little odd, or looking back on it now, it was a little intense, but it just seemed really natural and like something that absolutely should happen.
Right, and your passion, about it. I mean, to write these letters to your idol, to your teen idol, and so persistently. I mean, can you just kind of go back to your 12-year-old, 14-year-old self, what that felt like? And because your intention with people, when they see the film, they'll see your passion and intention and persistence. Talk about what that was at that time, looking back on it as you can.
Well, like I said, I just thought it was a really good idea. And I really just wanted to make it happen. But I think the obsessiveness of it, the real persistence and drive, was kind of fed by the fact that I never could get in touch with him. I never had success that way. So I just it was kind of the frustration kind of fueled it, and it kind of snowballed, and it just persisted. I guess if you can't have something, it makes you want it even more.
But I'd like to think that you thought you could get it because you wrote the letters.
Oh yeah, I mean, I knew that if I could break through and finally get to him, that he'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's great, Dion. Nice to meet you. Let's go."
Right.
So it was weird. It was it was hard for me, just because I just knew it was just such a great idea, and it would all happen. But the important step was getting in touch with him, which back then was a lot harder, I think, than it is to reach out to.
No Instagram. There's no
Instagram,
Twitter.
no Twitter.
No iPhones.
I say in the film, when at the beginning I didn't even know his name. I just knew he was in this film, and even then, now if you see somebody in a movie, you just pick up your phone and you look them up, and there it is. It was weeks before I found, maybe even months before I actually just had a name, and from there the saga just
It unfolds.
Impossible.
Unfolds, yeah, I know. And time goes by. I mean, I don't want to give too much away because I just really want compel people to really find this film and see this film. But time goes by, when you go to art school, you move and pick us back up.
A lot of time.
A lot of time goes by. How much time exactly was it?
Well, between like 40 years, let's say.
40 years goes by.
No, I should say 30.
Okay,
between
30.
The beginning events of the film and the events that led to the end of the film, 30 years.
Right. Okay. So those time goes by, and I don't want to again give too much away, but I guess the next question is like, what made you want to make the film after these events unfolded, that you are in LA and now you're doing what you're doing? When did you decide to make the film? And then you can reveal how much you want. I'm giving it to you how much you want to tell about it, but just the point of you may now be, as a filmmaker, documentarian, at what point did you decide you want to make the film?
Right. Well, it unfolded in such a crazy, unbelievable way. And was just something I would tell as a story to people. And actually one person, my friend Chris, who actually is one of the voices in the film, I told him one day, and he was like, "Oh, that's really interesting." He's like, that sounds like something they would do on, an NPR show like This American Life or something like that. He's like, "Maybe you should, look into contacting them." And I was like, "Really? Is it that interesting of a story?" And the more I thought about it, I was like, "Well, maybe." But, being a visual person, I just naturally was a film to me. And I was working at a company I primarily work as an editor on TV documentaries. And the company I was working for kind of slowed down. They ran out of shows, kind of folded. And I was looking at, just not having a job for the first time in 10 years. So I thought I would, take that time, because, you got to take it when you can, to make this film. At the time, I just thought it was going to be like a 20-minute little film that I would do in a few months. I didn't realize at the moment that it would be like this another few-year process that I would go through, not only getting the film done, but with the intervention of the pandemic, that kind of slowed the distribution, out to festivals and things like that. So it definitely became another crazy journey.
Right.
That
Another
this whole thing led me on.
And so when you did decide to make the film, and again, tell us as much as you'd like to share about Ike's response to you saying that you wanted to make a film about this.
Well, yeah, that was the key. I knew I wanted to do the film, but the way I wanted to do it would really hinge on his full involvement, and like really bringing up subjects that I wasn't sure he would be comfortable talking about. So I just made a phone call, and we talked for probably 2 hours, just kind of figuring things out, and and luckily at the time, he was starting to think about writing a memoir. So he had all these memories fresh in his mind, and he was willing to share them in his book. So, you know, obviously it was worked well for me that he would be able to talk, or be willing to talk about them in the film. So yeah, that was really, I think, good timing on my part.
But and what did he think when he heard about your letters from so long ago? What was his response when you?
Well, you know, I wasn't there for the moment. You know, that had happened years prior, so I wasn't there for a firsthand account. But I know that, you know, he found them charming and, you know, funny and kind of, you know, in a kind of goofy and that you know, awkward teenage kind of way. You know, they're funny. I mean, I read them now and I laugh. Just, you know, they're just the way teenagers think and, you know, approach the world is kind of disconnected from reality, and you know, that makes for some funny stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk about more the production of the film now. What was the production process again once you decided you're going to make the film, and what was that like from beginning to end?
Well, I first of all, you know, I had to get on Ike on board. Once that was, you know, then I could move forward, and from then it was just contacting people in my past, like people I went to school with, seeing if they A, would be willing to do it, and B, if they remembered or how much they remembered, you know, because I mean, everybody in my junior high knew about this plan. I mean, it was something I kept to myself. It's like everybody knew about it, but not everybody, you know, 40 years later at this point, remembered all the details. So, but I was lucky enough, like my best friend David, who I'd known since first grade. I mean, we're still great friends and still remain in contact. So he was completely willing to be on board. Another friend just happens to live in Ventura now, so that was, and he was a super talented artist as a kid. So we sat across each other from each other in art class. So, and luckily, you know, he was like, oh yeah, I remember that. So I luckily had enough people that knew about it, so I could interview them, and then it was, you know, just getting the interviews set up. I was lucky enough to be able to get into my junior high school building. I just reached out to the principal and told her what was going on, and she was like, actually, we're having an open house this week. You can come in. It was towards the end of the school year. And I was like, oh, that whatever, you know, as long as I can get into that building. And it just happens when we showed up, she was like, well, the open house has been canceled, but you can still have your free reign of the school. So that was a nice little thing that happened. And then once the interviews were set up, it was just, you know, most of the film. I mean, we shot a little B-roll, and then, you know, I sat down and just started editing. And then it hit me that I was going to need something to cover all of my memories, you know, like reenactments. And since I'd worked on all these cable documentaries over the years, reenactments are kind of always a tricky business because, you know, sometimes they look a little funny, or, you know, you try to come up with interesting ways to do them. And I was like, well, maybe I'll just try animating them. So I did one really quick, and I liked the way it looked, and Andy, the producer, thought it looked good, and I was like, well, that's what I'll do. So little did I realize at the moment that I needed a lot of these things, and that took maybe about 3 years to finish all of those.
Wow. And talk about how you found your voiceover artist, Talon Bone. And the letters.
Yes.
Who was you, as voice of you reading the letters.
Right. Well, when I first started editing, I just read all of my own VOs. You know, that's something, working in documentaries, that's something every editor does. You read the narration yourself, and knowing that someday someone will come and replace it. But for timing, for the spacing, you need some kind of voice there. And so I'd done that a million times. I just did it with the letters. And for a long time, we went back and forth, myself and Andy, my sister, David, because we were all watching the film, in different cuts and stages as we went along. And it was like, do we want to replace my voices? Because some people really liked the way I read them, because I knew the inflections, I knew how I knew how to say everything. And some people a couple of people were like, no, just keep them in. We tried just one. I found David's stepson read a couple lines just to see how it would sound, and it was just, it brought this quality to the film, and I was like, yeah, we're going to need to do this. So luckily enough, Andy is also an actor, so he knew where to go to do the casting stuff, and he set up basically a casting call, and I would say maybe 10, 15 kids. We just had them read the opening lines, and they sent them in, and we listened to them. And it's funny, I could just see everybody's first name, and I saw Talon, and I was like, is that someone's first name? And it struck me, because if you watch the film, a lot of the characters are birds, and there's also something I've realized editing it. There's a lot of birds in all the B-roll shots. It's if you want to go through the film one day and count all the birds, that could be an interesting drinking game. But so to see that his name was Tal, I was like, really, it intrigued me. And then I listened to it, and I was just like, oh my God, this is the one. I mean, I listened to all of them,
right,
but it was pretty much just, it was him all the way.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine any other voice in
He
there.
was great, and then we took him into the studio and recorded it, and he was just fantastic. It was just,
yes, he was.
Yeah,
yes,
he's
he
good.
Was. Yeah, really, it was great. It's really, really great. This film was just so inspiring to me, and I just want to ask, what would you like people to take away from your journey, this film?
Well, people have said to me that it's inspiring, so that's the reason I made it, is I just wanted to inspire people. I wanted, at the time I started it, the world was in a pretty dark place, and I just wanted to make something, inspiring, uplifting, good, warm-hearted. I just thought the world needed that. So even if it just brings a smile to a person's face, I'm good with that. But yeah, I would love for people to just, see that dreams are crazy things, and wow, mine, it didn't happen exactly as the 14-year-old me had envisioned, but it happened in the craziest way. So, life just, you gotta just kind of follow it along.
And never give up.
Enjoy the ride.
Yeah, never ever give up. I'm not going to give away the scene, but I'm going to let people watch it to see that the moment I'm going to ask you about. But that moment that your dream does come to life, you know what I'm talking about, the scene. It's like, what was going through your mind? Like, could you think back to the 14-year-old you and what the 14-year-old you would have thought? Like, oh my God, like, what this is happening. Can you talk about that moment?
It was just, I mean, it's all been so surreal. But I just think if the 14-year-old me just knew that it would happen, so he would have probably just been like, what took you so long? It just seemed, and maybe somehow I knew back then, it just seemed like something that was inevitable. So, but yeah, to finally actually see it was just unreal.
I bet. Well, thank you so much for being here
sure.
today. It was a joy and a pleasure to talk
to
to you. And everybody's got to see this film. It's really wonderful.
I would love for everyone to see it.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.